Hello everyone and welcome back to Wednesday's Live. Missed you guys last week. I had fun at Bluff Strokes. I even managed to get third place in the main event and I had a really good time. Hi Carol. So this week I wanted to explore strategies for creating reflections in water and wave patterns, that kind of thing, such as these nice a boat has gone by and the little reflections that we get from the different buildings. And it'll also be a good means of revisiting how we do the washes and how we monitor the consistencies of paint relative to the condition of the paper that we're putting them on. So I apologize for the buzzing noise you may hear. Cluster flies are quite bad this time of year when you live out in the country. They're part of life. So we've got this beautiful still sky. We've got this wonderful sharp set of shapes that silhouette very nicely, and we've got this somewhat calm water that was slightly disturbed. So we'll how do we get the little ripples? How do we get the bigger ripples? That's what we're going to do today. I can't tell you how much fun it was to be here in Venice and in other parts of Italy and other parts of France and stand where your heroes stood, try to find the spot. This is what we're looking at here is the Church of St. George. It's called San Giorgio Maggiore. It's on an island in the lagoon, and they have this lovely campanile. It's a famous shape. Here's the watercolor version by J.M.W. Turner. Oh, thank you, Lucy. I was at it about 5:30 in the morning. Looks like Turner was there a little bit later than that. Clearly morning still. That we're looking kind of southeast at this spot. I love the ships with the masts. That's the joy of the early to mid 1800s. Here's a version by Claude Monet. A more daytime version, or maybe actually afternoon, because the light is hitting the front of the church there. Here's an evening, or maybe very early morning. No, this would be evening, and he's looking back towards Santa Maria della Salute. Just a spectacular place to go. And the first thing we have to do, hi Patty, hi Kathy. I guess the first thing we have to do is decide how we want to compose this. Oddly enough, I'm not going to do any drawing until I've got washes in. You'll see why, and a little bit different way of doing it to help us get that very level water line. This is a nice vertical version. I like these reflections that come down into the water. You can see here how it's just on a little island too. I'm just very charmed with those. These are near the Piazza San Marco, where the gondolas moor. Here's a kind of a longer view back to the place. Here is a very blurry version. I zoomed out and I tricked out the focus on the camera so I could just see a silhouetted shape. And it's very important to see these kinds of shapes when we're trying to paint. Hello, Becky. So I think I'm going to stick with the one I posted. I may zoom in a bit and perhaps make it a bit like that. But in any case, we need to get this lovely transition from the blue to the yellows, to the orange, to the violets, and then into that again, and then back into blues again. So I'm going to be talking, if you're new to this, these sessions that we do, I'm going to review the beaded wash and the conditions of the paper. So no drawing, none of that yet. We're going to, good way, Fly. We're going to do our sky and our water, and then all the rest of that is going to come afterwards. So what I need to do is, unlike an oil painting or something else, I need to get all the colors that I'm going to use here pre-mixed onto the palette and make sure that they're all ready to go so I can go right to them so that they will blend seamlessly. So I'm putting some water here. I'm going to make a red puddle, a blue puddle, and a yellow and maybe a orangey puddle. So I'm just putting some water up here. Probably you can't see down to this thing. I'm going to have colors all ready to go. We're working on an 11 by 15 sheet of Saunders Waterford, 140 pound cold press. Any good cotton watercolor paper will do. So the colors today, I have yellow ochre, cat orange, iron oxide red, or burnt sienna, burnt umber. This is a very dirty quinacridone rose, and here's the alizarin crimson permanent, the bluish red, and then I have the warmer reds like naphthol or cad. I have some dioxazine purple. I may use that. Ultramarine blue, I'm definitely going to use that. Let's just get that out there and make our puddle. We're going to make a runny mix of paint. When we tilt it, the paint runs very easily. So the board is at a roughly 45-degree angle. So I'm going to get a lot of that going. Might get a little bit of cobalt turquoise in there while I'm still using it. And I may modify these as I go. I'm going to make my red puddle over here. So I'm going to get some of the quinacridone rose, which, my goodness, that got dirty, didn't it? Let's get some of the alizarin. I need a bluish red for kind of these areas down there. So I'm going to get some of this opera rose, which I typically save for flowers, but what the heck. In other words, not an orangey red. And then down, well, let's see, rinsing the brush out. Over here, I'm just going to get some straight up yellow ochre. Very dense color, make sure you get a lot of water in it. Probably sounds like we're in a beehive from all these dumb flies. I might make a orange puddle down here. All of these mixes are very runny paint. When I tilt the palette, the paint runs. So, all those colors are ready to go. Hi, Vicky. How are you? I think I am probably going to need to put in a little stronger mix of the blue. And I can lighten it up as I go down. Now, the importance of that 45-degree angle, or some kind of relatively steep angle on this board, is so that when I begin this beaded wash, everything drains downhill and the one color seamlessly blends with the next color. And it's very important in watercolor to understand that you don't physically blend the colors on the paper like you would do with oils or acrylics. You let the water move the pigment as the water is still on the surface of the paper, and then the colors begin to blend in a way that only watercolor can do. And kind of its, get away fly, kind of its calling card. So, I'm going to start with the blue, then I'm going to switch to the yellow, then go to the orangier, then to the red, and then back to the yellow. You can kind of see where this being a reflection of the sky, it's a reverse of what's above it. So, I'm going to try to concentrate that there. So here we go. Load up with the blue. Oh gosh, always make more than you think you're going to need, especially with because there's so much blue in this. You can use it later. Here we go. Notice the bead forming. Let's get a little, that bead that collects there, we come up underneath it, we catch it, and the gravity and the hydraulics pull it down. Now this is the point where I'm going to start adding a little water to the mix to get a little lighter version of it. Rinsing that, I'm going to rinsing it good, I'm going to the yellow ochre here, coming up and touching it underneath. Now, you think, why isn't that turning green? Well, it would be if I was physically mixing it. And rinse that, because a little bit of the blue is going to go down into it. Whoa, we don't worry about that. Now we're going to go to the orange. And can you get the exact same mix that you get? Now we're going to go to the red. No, you can't get the exact same mix. So if it's not going enough, tilt it to get the bleed that you want. Going back to the orange, keep a bead, that's very important. Okay, back to the yellow ochre. These are the underneath colors. Monet did his version, and now we're going to start going back to the greenish yellow, lighter stone. Turner did his version, now we're going to do our version. So you can see that drip is kind of disguised, and we are going to cover it up with some lovely little reflections like that. Okay. Now, this, oh, I might even turn this upside down. Golly. I'm rinsing my brush, I'm blotting it out, squeezing off the excess, and I'm drinking up what collects at the bottom. But I might even turn this upside down. Yeah. Now it's going to drain back. This I want to dry. So I'm going to mute the microphone. Okay, so now you're going to understand why it was that I did not do any drawing at first. Because this stuff is moving around and it's migrating. Originally we were like this, then I decided to turn it upside down. I am going to place these things where I want them. Had I drawn them, and then we don't know, the water might have caused all of this to appear down there or too far up or whatever. So I want to leave myself the option of doing all of this where I want it. Now the thing I don't want to do is put this, the campanile there, kind of in the middle. That's a tough composition. I'm going to slide it over here a bit to get it off there. You could just as easily go a little further that way, but I kind of like it sort of like this. And I also see a little bit more blue down here than I see up here. So I want the darker blues down here because there's going to be another wash that goes across that. So I'm getting a strip of tape here, and I'm going to make my water line where I think it ought to be a little bit above half. Because I want it to be level, and when I paint this next thing, you'll see why I did this. Now also you'll notice that there's a little bit of a stagger between the northeast side of Venice there and the island itself. So I'm going to put another piece of tape a little bit higher to give me that gap. Maybe about like so. And then I'm going to burnish this down good so that I don't get a drip line. Now, the drawing. Let's talk about this. Let's go back to that blurry shape. What we don't want to do is get lost in all these little details, because when you zoom in, yes, you see that. When you're standing out there, if you put your eye here, it adjusts for the distance and the illumination, and you see all that detail. But when your eye is viewing the entire scene, oops, such as that or that, you see more of a silhouette, and that's the feel of it. That's the mood of it. There's some variation in the hue. It's a little bluer here on that white stone. It's a little redder here on the brick or whatever it's made of. It's a little bit different back here. Still in all, it's staying one pretty consistent value, very little variation. So we're going to try and keep that going. Now I think I'd also like to get this cloud bank in back here. So I'm going to use again these colors that I've used, but to get a nice soft transition from there to that, I'm going to start with, go back to the mop brush. It's about 3/4 of an inch wide and maybe 1.25 inches long. It's I believe a number 14 or 16. Holds a lot of water. I'm getting some just plain water, and above where I want to start putting these colors in, I'm going to moisten the paper. So that would be about up here. You can't see that, but it's water. Now I'm going to go into the yellow ochre, and I'm going to come under that and see where it blends nicely above. Then I'm going to go into the orange. Then rinsing, I'm going to go into the red. I'm going to have to really get some red here. And I'm going to go right down. Now, I've got a stopping point. I don't want that to be so glaring. So again, go to the water, bring it right over to it. To it, but not through it. And then we're going to dry that. So mute again. All right, now that cloud bank, I'm going to mix a little bit. That's a sharp edge, so I'm going to paint that on dry paper. Some of the blue into some of the red to make a pale, a little more blue. I think it's more bluish than it is purplish. Ever so slightly violet blue. And a little bit of water. And it's going to come to about, whoops, there. And again, I'm going to rinse, get clear water, and I'm going to taper it out as we go to the right. Again, here we go with the if we were working on location, these drawing events would probably happen a little faster than you would actually like. As I found out in Dubuque, it was sunny. It was 5-6 days of nearly identical lighting and weather, but it was, goodness, it was windy and dry. Very hard to paint in watercolor under those conditions. Okay. This is going to be a two-brush paper. Hi, Michael. This is going to be a two-brush painting. I'm going from a squirrel mop or a faux squirrel mop to a number 14 nylon round. Hello, Carlene. Goodness, all kinds of new friends today. This is fun. The tape is going to give me that sharp waterline edge, and I'm going to be able to just really bang in there and get these things without having to worry about getting an edge. When you want to do a straight edge, hello Julie, how are you? When you want to do a straight edge, the default thing that we think to do is we get on the point of the brush and we use it like a pencil. Oddly enough, you get a straighter line when you're pulling it like this, and you'll see that when I go to paint the campanile. So I am going to mix up some very, very thick paint. I'm going to get some of the dioxazine purple right out of almost tube strength. When you see what, let me dry out the blue so you can see the difference. This paint will not run when we tip it, or it shouldn't. If it does run too much, I will have to put more pigment in and less water. So let's get rid of our yellow ochre there. So you can see this is slow moving paint. When I tip it, it doesn't run like that did. So that, some of the blue, this is really almost tube strength paint. And to keep that from being too shockingly purple, I'm going to put some burnt umber in it, which is kind of a brown, or maybe some burnt sienna to make it. Now, yeah, look at that. I mean, this is not going to move. This is the consistency of what you would do in acrylic. Now, first thing that hi Linda, what we don't want to do is start up here and try to draw the outline of that building. What we want to do is bang in there with a brush and get a lot of paint on there. And then as there's less paint on the brush, we're going to pull up and get the specific shapes. Now, if you don't feel competent with your drawing, then you can, go away fly, you can go ahead and draw maybe lightly. Hello, Jane. Or use the point method. I know that I'm going to be a little to the right of center. That's okay in painting, not in life. Now that's a starter, okay? Now look at that. That's just kind of a triangle shape coming down from there. Don't worry if it's a little bit rough. There's a, see, as less paint is on the brush, now I'm going to, there being less paint on the brush now, I'll go to the tip and I will make the finer marks. And we'll go up and we'll get the cross up there. Now there's a space. Let's pull out there. Bit of a space. And it goes up, and these are, you know, basic house shapes. Not worrying about that little thing there. I'm going to go up for this big thing. I'm going to try to execute. I'll put a little turquoise in it. Tube strength. Why tube strength? Because we need to, you'll see. Go up. See, when I pulled that sideways, I didn't go like this. I pulled the brush sideways and it made a pretty straight line. Center, center. Then I go up and I get that. You can, it's almost like you feel like, okay, if I had to lay the brush in there, look at the shape it'll make. Okay. Statue of probably St. George. Some archangel. Again, I'm going to pull sideways to get a straight edge. Down. Boom, 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 boom. Then let's pull out so we see a little further here. Now I might get a little water on the brush and start moving this thick paint about till I get that solid silhouette. And we can lift some paint out of this. Down, up. If you can draw with a pencil, you can draw with a brush. That's just, you know, there's not a lot of difference tool-wise. Hi, Jim. Between these two things, they're long objects. So we're going to start putting some damper paint in here. Maybe some turquoise, or this is runnier paint. Not as runny as we used before, but because that surface is thick and damp, we can merge those things very nicely. In fact, we can, because there's still some water on the surface, hello Lynn, we can almost lift out the front, take some of the paint out, or maybe throw a little more bluishness in there, to get the effect of the facade of the church. Oh my God, the churches in these countries are just so exquisitely beautiful. There's some stuff down here. A couple little lighthouse gizmos. I think that's what they are. And later we will get the tiny little bits like that. Now I want to get the island area over there. Because it's farther away, and because I'm going to go with a little more water in the mix so that it's lighter and appears to be further up the lagoon. So there's some trees up here. There was another one of those lighthouse type buildings, which in Turner's picture was very obvious. So let's try this a bit. And hey Brad, how are you? Let's pull our tape. Instant Venice. With a silhouette situation, this kind of thing will work. I'm going to carefully mop a bit. See, I squeeze the paint out of the brush like that, and I can kind of mop a shape out if I want it slightly lighter in there. But it's very important to me to get the appearance of a backlit early morning situation. So that the degree of darkness of all these things is relatively similar. And minor variations in the color here and there, but for the most part it is a silhouette. So later on you'll see more variation, like in Turner's or Monet's version. But this too, I want to dry. Okay, so at this point we're going to go back to the bigger brush and we're going to try and get the character of the water. Now again, I'm going to mop up some of these colors. I may, but I may not use them again. I'm going to be making runny mixes of colors like we did initially, but they're going to be a little bit more pigment in them. Not quite as runny as we had before, but still wet enough so that when we do these washes with the big brush, they'll flow nicely. Again, I'm going to want to have all the colors that I'm going to use ready to go. I think I want a little more of the yellow ochre. It's typically when you have a reflection of the sky in the water, they will not be identical values or identical colors. They will be a little bit darker in one and a little bit lighter in the other, or a little bit more vibrant in one and a little less vibrant in the other. Those are all things that you want to notice so that it looks natural. I'm going to put a little bit of orange in that. What I'm looking at is these underneath colors. The blues are going to the ripples in the water, and the reflections are going to go in secondarily. Hello, Diane. So there's the yellow ochre. Let's get some more. Don't want to run out. Maybe a little bit of the reddish color over here. A turquoisey blue over here, or at least cerulean or turquoise will do. Now this has to be done with paint that you've freshly squeezed out in your pockets there, because what we need to do to get the look of those reflections, make them look like water. Gosh, maybe I better get, yeah, make it strong, John. You've probably, if you haven't heard me, great. If you have heard me before, bears repeating. I've often made an analogy to getting the effect that we're about to try here to putting whipped cream on a cup of hot cocoa. When you have a cup of hot cocoa, it's liquid and it's kind of chocolatey brown. If you pour liquid into it, something equally liquid like milk, all that milk just disperses and the whole thing gets lighter. That's what happens when you put runny paint into paint you've just painted on there. Hello, Chris. If you take your hot cocoa and you spray a glob of, or put a dollop of whipped cream on top, oops, sorry about the earthquake there. It melts around the edges but it stays put. And so when we do these reflections in these waves, I'm going to be sticking my brush right into this tube strength paint to make these marks. And they will melt at the edges, but they'll stay roughly the same size, certainly in the same position. They're not going to move all over the page. So here we go. Going to be very careful not to hit this too hard. I'm going to bring this paint right to that because it will dissolve a little bit of the darker colors. But if some of that does happen, no big deal because we can parlay it into a reflection. So here we go with the yellow ochre, light touch. Now I'm going to switch to the reddish tones. And I'm going to keep going down with a mixture of the two. Very similar to when we did the sky. This is just a way of getting the water a little bit darker. Because I see some of those orangey tones all the way down to the bottom. Now I'm going for the runny mix of the sort of turquoisey blue-greens. Now you see I didn't get a bead going there. I'm getting a kind of more distinct line, which is, I hope, fingers crossed, is going to play out, let's even get a little purple in there, like a ripple in the water. So a little bit of a wobble in the paint there. Now, right now, I'm switching back to that other brush. I'm going to dip right into these turquoises, blues, violets, and the surface, there's still some water on the surface. Let's get some turquoise in there. This is whipped cream. It's onto the stabbing right in. Let's get right into the. Let's get a little dirtied up a bit with the burn umber. So I'm going to try to make a bit of a Z. It's a little drier up here. So any marks you want to make up there of this type, you want to get them quickly and you want to get them first. Down here it's wetter. So we're going to right into the turquoise. Have to work quickly, or the edge won't melt. Now, if you are getting some too much drying too soon, take your sprayer, mist from a distance. Let the water fall, just like when they say to put on perfume, to spray it into the room and then walk into it. Now, on the side of the brush, I'm going to get some of this turquoisey mix. And because it's drier up here, I'm going to pull across. And because it is drier, I get a little, and I'm using the side of the brush, I'm getting more of a broken mark, particularly if I don't have a lot of paint on the brush. So I'm going to try and make this look like the ripples that are farther away. Get away, fly. Now I'm actually going to take some of this and I'm going to start trying to indicate reflections. The more distinct the ripple, the more disturbed the water is, the more distinct and separated the little things like this will be. Farther away, I want it lighter. I like this little boat that's coming out here. I'm going to make a line for it, its wake. A little bit of a reflection there. Again, if it feels too dry, mist from a distance. Don't hose it down. It'll turn into a mess. You want to go at it from a little bit further away. Okay. Let's keep working on that. A little bit out there, not much. Now this is runny into runny. You see how that blurs out? When we stick into the stuff, right into the almost the tube strength paint, even on a wet surface, it's going to stay put. So if you need a more distinct shape, that's how you do it. If you get too distinct a shape, bring some water to it. I think we could still get away with a glaze over there. We may need it still. Okay, so let's dry this. And then I'm going to just do a big unifying wash of, let's do the turquoise. Again, this will be runny paint. A glaze is when you put a runny mix of paint over a previously painted surface that is quite dry. So, starting at the top where I want it to be a little orangier, I'm going to just rinse my brush out good and get some orangey water. And then I'm going to go to my turquoise. Here and there I might even leave a little bit of that yellow behind. Now, more of the paint, less of the water as I get to the bottom here. Oh, let's get a bit more up here too. And this will be the last time I use the hairdryer. Hi, Bailey. We'll dry this. Okay, our last marks will be some creamy dark paint. So I'm going to use my burn umber ultramarine blue. I'm going to make that lovely little boat, that motor launch. We don't have the lovely boats that Turner had. I'm going to use the very, very tip with a very little paint to get some of these vertical shapes. There's some posts and poles and things of that sort out there. And then I'm going to rinse that off, and we're going to do, with gouache right out of the, or white watercolor right out of the tube, we're going to get those sticking the point right into the neck of the tube strength. We're going to get those little lights. Be sure when you space them, you're not doing them too regularly, even if they are on a street where they're spaced regularly. This group here, you'll notice as they get closer to us, they get further apart. And larger. There's a lovely little grouping over here. But I also want to make them somewhat more orangey yellow. So I'm just going to get some Naples yellow. Again, sticking the point of the brush right into the top of the paint. And then we're going to make the reflections of it. Similar to what we see here, perhaps. So make them as prominent for the ones that are further away. You can even pull them with your finger to get a look like that. And you can take them down to wherever you'd like. You could even insert some horizontal light spots. Here, I really apologize for these flies. Get off of there. So, how about go back to our original. I think I want to go just a bit darker with the reflection of the campanile in spots. And oh hex, there's a little go away fly. We could even get into one of our lighter, more opaque colors, like the oh gosh, I don't have any of the oh, here it is. This is a Holbein color called lavender, which is just that blue plus a little bit of white. Put some little streaks and things like that in the water. When you do these streaks, notice that they're thicker and they're farther apart, closer to us, and they're thinner and closer together as we go back, just like ties on a railroad track. So you can put some small minor details like that here. But you want to be careful with that. You don't want it to get too far out of line. I think it's best used down here. Okay, so let's peel it and see if that tells us anything. Come on. There we go. So I think I could go a little bit lighter on the campanile there. So I'm going to get some water and just moisten it. Draw down. So that removes some paint. If it seems too dark and silhouetted, loosen it up, squeeze the brush, mop a bit of the paint out. I think maybe on the cupola on top, I could lift a wee bit out. And then I think right under the main shape, I am going to just add just a bit more wet on dry work to suggest the less significant reflections. So there we are. The big thing here is understanding what is the condition of the paper and what is the consistency of the paint I'm about to put on it. Thank you, Vicki. When we're doing a beaded wash and we want to get that sort of seamless kind of color, then we want to use runny paint so that as we bring the next color underneath the bead, it does this very slow visual kind of thing. When we want to get a distinct but soft edge shape, then what we want to do is make sure that there's still some water on the surface, but that the paint that we're bringing to it is not runny paint or even slow moving. It's thick, creamy paint. It's the whipped cream on the cocoa, so that the shape is maintained while the edges soften. So it's something, you get a scrap of paper that's not particularly, painting that didn't come out or something like that. You can practice those sorts of things. If we want to make a more broken stroke, such as these little things here, then you want the surface to be drier. And be mindful of where you've just painted. When you have this on a 45-degree angle, the water is shearing down the paper. Go away, fly. So it's a little drier up here and a little moister down there. So you gotta, if you want to do something with whipped cream on the cocoa, you got to do it up here first. You got a little more time before you go do it down there. So I think I could probably reinforce my reflections a bit more. I was very charmed with that stuff. It's a magical city, Venice. And there we go. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that. By all means, if you have a topic that you'd like to see dealt with, or or gives you fits, probably gives me fits too, just shoot a line, or if you have a question about anything that I talked about this time, put it in the comments, and I can find those and I can answer it. If you have a subject matter that you'd like to see done, by all means tell me, because I like to help folks along. So thank you, Mary Helen. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Vicki. Everybody stay safe, stay sane. I got to get out the vacuum cleaner and take care of some of these flies. So I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.